Hey everyone, Simon here, aka Cineval, the lead developer for Harmonia. It is high time that we released a gameplay video showing off the new features that we have. That's been the project, that's been the goal for me at least for the last 2 or 3 weeks or so. But as fast as I can crank out the code to get everything up to go, it's still just not ready yet. So I'm going to have a work in progress gameplay video in the background while I just sort of chat over what's been going on. There's been a lot of internal management work being done, which is mostly just reorganizing the code so that it's easier to manage across multiple platforms, and it's all like committed into a Git database and all that, which is kind of a joke that it wasn't before, but now it is. And doing some little internal fixes and adding stuff to the debug menu and all that, so other members of the team can work on things such as textures a lot more easily, and a lot of bug fixing, which is definitely needed, and some engine upgrades, which is always necessary, and a lot of engine, not rewrites, but just kind of reworking so that some of the new features will work a lot better. It's at the point where the game is playable, but certain really key client-side information is not there. For example, it doesn't show anybody's name on like a little tooltip or anything, and you can't use mouse command yet. Everything is still done. Everything at the moment, if you see this little gameplay in the background, gameplay video, I'm doing everything with console commands in the little chat window, and I'm giving all these really mysterious hotkeys that correspond to things that make sense server-side, but don't really make any sense unless you know exactly what's going on. So, still need to make an interface for all of that, although it's technically working. Let's see, one thing that really needs to be added rather soon is that you can't see anything that's in your inventory or anything that's on the map object-wise. You can see all the entities and all that, like everything you can interact with combat and chat and such, but if they're killed and they drop stuff on the ground, you can't see that, and you don't get any sort of hotkey on if you want to use the git command, what you should use to pick it up. So I'm literally just guessing every single letter in the alphabet to try and get it, which is super silly. Obviously that's going to be fixed. It just needs to be put in like everything else, all the 10,000 other features that need to come in. There has been the release of Harmonia Classic in the last couple weeks, and it's still super buggy, but there's mainly the point of that release was to just get that project kind of off our back so that we could really focus on this. Because as cool as that other project is, we really need to focus on this one. That's more than enough on our plate. And everything that we work on server side for this project totally applies to everything in Harmonia Classic, as far as bugs fixing and like changing the content and stuff. Pretty much everything server side that doesn't have to do with interacting with this client. So the latest thing that we're working on right now is getting all of the tactical. I can put a link in the video description or right here in the video. Is getting the tactical mouse-driven stuff working when you're connected to the server, because right now I can do it, but it doesn't send any information. So my sprite moves locally, but the server thinks I'm still in the same spot, and it gets all borky. It also involves, unfortunately, an overhaul to the way the AI and the tactical orders work server-side, which will be a big gameplay change as well, but it's definitely for the better. The way things work right now is every single movement or action that you do is considered a command in and out of combat. And if you're in combat, if you decide to move one square, this counts as a full action, and then you have to queue up another attack action, and they take about an equal amount of time. And you get some ridiculous situations like infinite kiting with an archer where the warrior has to step forward one step to attack an archer because the archer is ranged and the warrior is not. And the archer just spends his turn taking one step back so that he can get in range with the warrior, and this just goes on forever until one of them gets lucky. And it's just stupid, it's not fun. But the way it's going to work is with every attack, you're going to have about 3, this is subject to balance, but about 3 movement squares that you can do per attack. And they're going to cost the same amount of stamina to use as they did before, but it'll just use 3 moves plus the attack as one big move. So you can move towards your target, attack, and there will be a bigger penalty because you did 2 actions at once, but that should get rid of the ridiculous kiting situations. And it should make gameplay slower overall, which is good because then you can spend more time thinking about tactical stuff. And it will show what moves are going to happen on the map with the sort of bright cyan arrows pointing to your move location, and then the nice little attack sword icon thingamajig pointing at your target, which is in that video, which is once again right there. As you can see, the stamina bar is working. It was originally yellow, and now it's been recolored to blue so that yellow can be the hit points bar. If you can see when my priest cast a spell, which there's really no way to tell whether or not he's using a spell unless you're reading all the redundant battle spam down at the bottom. The magenta bar lowers so you can see his MP. Those all refill totally, of course. One thing that needs to be added also is you can't tell whether or not a unit is currently in combat or in free wandering mode. And I've been thinking about that a lot, and how to show it is I think it's going to change the color of your little targeting thing on the grid, that little square with the four yellow corners. That's going to turn to red when they're in combat, and also the grid will change from its regular white color to red to show areas that are combat zones. And when you're in a combat zone, you can't move around freely and you have to issue orders, and there's a much larger penalty for moving around than when there is when there is just whatever. I'm looking for a word and it's not coming. Anyway, moving on. The way that's going to work is going to be pretty slick. If somebody attacks you or you attack somebody else, it's going to create this area on the map that's a combat zone. And over time, that's going to fade away unless you issue another hit that kind of refreshes that it's a combat zone. So if you are fighting somebody and you're not actually attacking for a while, that combat area is going to shrink, so you're allowed to run away. And while you're running away, nobody's getting hit, that combat area will shrink as well. And you'll be able to see where a combat area is just by hovering your mouse over the map, and that will be highlighted in red on the grid. It might just highlight it anyway, or that may be an option, we don't really know. Speaking of options, one thing that needs to happen is automatic group following, and what I would really love to have is the sort of thing where when you're in free wander mode and you have your whole party, they are following along in a line like you would in a standard JRPG style. Alternatively, it would be great if you could give a battle formation, so you could wander around with your priest in the back and your warrior and your other hitter right beside you, so if something comes up by surprise, you're already ready to go and you can start issuing commands. Nobody's going to start hitting your priest or your other squishies in the back. This is, at the moment, a far-off feature just because there's so much groundwork to lay. With the ironic thing is that a lot of the features are already in, and they're in client-side, and they're definitely in server-side, but they just aren't communicating right now. So these little protocols and interfaces need to be finished. But as you can see, I'm playing the game in the background, and So you can switch targets by pressing the, I guess, the back quote key, and I'm doing that quite often. As you can see, it keeps track of several maps at a time. Some of the shared vision stuff is still pretty broken. Like, if I'm hearing sound effects from somebody on another map, I still hear that if I have another unit selected on a different map. Like my poor bird soldier dies a lot, and he gets sent to the priest and the town priest, and I hear him getting healed while I'm following my other character, which is just kind of weird. And yeah, this is just sort of a new feature that's still very alpha, yeah. So it obviously has a lot of things to work out. And there's some redundant grouping features that are rather silly. Like, before, it was a purely single-player game. Like, this is way back in days of yore, and you would have to give consent to a player for them to group you, and then they would add you to the group, and then that affected what you could see and whether you could target them when they're not actually in the room and stuff like that. And it should do that by default if you log multiple characters in at the same time. It just doesn't yet, and you should group clients together, not by their actual player in the game, but by the actual connection to the server. And you know, that's getting technical, but that's gonna have to do some more overhauls, which I'm not pleased about, and tons of playtesting. So there's definitely tons to do, but things are coming along slowly, even though I'm working on it all the time, and I really need to get more hobbies. So yeah, that's the update for right now. Hopefully by next month I can get an actual proper video of this out, but for the moment I need to go back to website development and all this other stuff, and which is not my favorite, but it's a necessary evil. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this little video, and I will talk to you later.